Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome back to Cilinix Crypto. Hope you're having a good weekend. Hope you're having a good Sunday. Welcome to this new video in which I wanted to speak about a couple of things for next week mainly, but also for the next 24 hours especially, that I think you need to know. I mean, it's bound to be a very, very volatile week. I've spoken and I've heard some other traders about it as well. I mean, Bitcoin itself, but also in terms of the fundamentals, it does seem like we're getting very, very close to a breaking point, which I'll also show you regarding altcoins specifically in a moment, but that's a little bit later in the video, where you know we're either close to the bottom or close to the bear market, but more on that later. But in this video, I just wanted to discuss everything you need to know, all of the factors influencing the markets in the next 24 hours, but also next week, so that you're prepared, right, and that you can have a relatively safe week of trading, and that you know what to expect. All right, so let's get right into it. First thing I wanted to do, and I promised this morning that I would spend a little bit more time talking about it, not too much, but a bit more, is economic data. Next week we have, as always, some important economic data. I can make it very simple for you. The most important things are the CPI and inflation rate data, especially with the recent tariffs. We want lower than expected data. That would be good for crypto. And then Friday we have PPI. Wednesday we have FOMC minutes. All right. So in general, that's about monetary policy. That matters as well. That's late Wednesday in UTC time zone. So Wednesday and Thursday, those are the only dates for economic data. I will keep you updated on that. All right. So if you're interested in that, which you should be if you're trading and if you're active in the markets, then keep watching at least my Bitcoin videos in the morning. But now about the markets. All right. Well, there's basically two things I think that are most important for the markets in the next 24 hours. And by far the most important thing is how equities open. All right. So overnight, the futures market for the S&P 500 in this case, which I always reference as equities, US equities in this case, will open. And what we're basically looking for, and then later tomorrow, obviously, US equities normally in the US session will open. I've turned my volume up a little bit, so maybe you should turn your volume down. And what we're looking for is whether we will either see a continuation of this extreme bearish pressure we have seen, or that we can actually see a reversal and some recovery. Now, I can talk very, very long about what I expect. Personally, I think this is a bit of an overreaction by the markets, and I think we are due for getting some sort of a pull-up, all right, so some sort of recovery. But ultimately, this just depends a lot on the tariffs, what will happen with them, will they still change, trade deals, and just in general how this trade war, or at least this tariff situation, will develop, all right? So I think it's much, much better to wait for some actual confirmation so that we either see an escalation, all right, and that we see the stock markets or equities fall down lower, which would be bearish for crypto, or we see a de-escalation leading to recovery, which would be extremely good for crypto. All right, so that is something, I mean, you can try to predict it, but trust me, like some of you might get it right, but we don't have the edge here. All right, it's just there's too many factors, and it's more like gambling than trading, in my opinion. And then secondarily, so that's very important. That is something we will definitely keep talking about in the next 24 hours. But then secondarily, what matters as well is to see how much Bitcoin Sailor bought. All right, because what we have seen, and I've made a video on that yesterday as well, but what we have seen is that crypto held up relatively well against equities in the last couple of weeks, and we want to know, all right, well, why is that? All right, who's buying Bitcoin? And if it's only Michael Saylor from MicroStrategy buying Bitcoin, I would say that's bearish. Usually he posts a picture on Sunday or Monday about how much they bought in the week before. So if they have bought a lot, I would say that's bearish. If they did not buy a lot, I would say that's extremely bullish, all right? Because that means that there's someone, or at least that means that there's some demand for buying Bitcoin even when equities are down. Would be extremely bullish, all right? And then a bearish continuation for US equities might not even matter that much as we think. But those are the two main things fundamentally I think you need to keep an eye on. If we focus on the technicals for Bitcoin real quick here, and XRP, which I'll do, and then also some altcoins like I promised. What you'll see, or at least we'll take a look at that briefly. I wanted to quickly say that, you know, next week is going to be volatile. Next week is going to be unpredictable. If you want to be optimally prepared for that, consider joining our Signal group. All right, it's not free. I know that's not amazing, so it's definitely a commitment. But in there, we actually last week, through all the volatility, not only stayed safe, but we actually made quite a lot of money as well. I think we had like 3 or 4 profitable trades. So if you're interested in that, and just in general a huge amount of information, education, and updates, check that out. Links are down in the description. And for those of you watching this video, I have a special deal. If you DM me on X, all right, so that's at cilinixfxcapital, DM me there, and I might be able to actually give some of you free access for at least a month. But DM me there, and we'll talk there. But talking about Bitcoin, what you can see right here, if we take a look at the TPO here, what you can see is that this weekend, obviously, volume has decreased a lot. You have some very tight bases, which basically means that the price is not very volatile, and that liquidity that we can derive from the volume is very, very thin. What this basically means is that we will see a lot of volatility in the next 24 hours. I think most of you already knew that. That's nothing new. But ultimately, for Bitcoin, the main thing we're looking at, it seems very likely right now with all the uncertainty that Bitcoin is going to drop down into the bottom of the range we have, around 81 and 80,000. And what matters a lot is how we react to that level. All right, we might still have some imbalances left there. If we can get a strong reaction from that level so that we have a lot of volume coming in at that level, I think that would be a great sign for not only holding this level, but also maybe later on next week, if we can also see some recovery from equities, to get a breakout, which I know sounds crazy, but I do think it's a possibility. So that is also something I'll keep you updated on. Like I said, focus on that level between 81 and 80,000. And then last of all, XRP, I still think my video this morning actually covers everything. What we said there is that it was quite likely, again, with the uncertainty, that XRP would test that level between 2.05 and 1.95. I still do expect, I mean, like I said, I mean, it looks likely we're going there. I still do expect that we're going to hold that level. And whether that's with a reclaim right here, or whether we can just hold it blank, we will see. That depends a lot on the equities opening as well. Unfortunately, everything depends on it. But ultimately, I still think XRP is going to be able to hold this. Now, briefly, what I wanted to end on, and this video is way too long, so excuse me for that. But what I wanted to end on is what you can see right here, and that is the others market cap. So this is basically the crypto market cap minus the top 10 cryptos. And what you can see is that this is nearing a major support zone between 190 and 170 billion dollars. It's still a couple of percentages down for sure, but that's a level, first of all, where I would actually be looking into buying altcoins again. But that's also the level we need to hold if we want to still have a chance at getting some bullish markets in 2025. More on that later, all right? At least for now, I've introduced the topic to you. I think that's in general what we talked about in this video. I think that's everything you need to know for now. So thank you for watching. I'll see you all in my next videos, and bye.